They say there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. As even CoffeeZilla said, this is levels of insanity we've never seen before, based on a few posts from Donald Trump today that sent markets flying. In other words, we just experienced one of those weeks as Trump recently slapped tariffs on virtually every other nations, which created for loads of volatility. And when you look at the VIX index, we actually had a weekly close that was higher than it's ever been since back in 2020 during the coronavirus pandemic. So just today, Trump announced something that has everyone in disbelief and provided some much needed hope and relief for markets. This one announcement from Trump caused markets to rebound sharply. On the day, the S&P 500 is up 11.6%. Bitcoin followed closely at 11.4%, and XRP is up a whopping 21.4% since the local low down at 170. What recently happened had people like Bill Ackman, the legendary billionaire investor who made $2.6 billion in less than 1 month with a $27 million hedge during COVID-19. And just this week, he was actually mostly condemning the actions of Trump with tariffs in virtually all industries and all countries. But now he seems to be praising Trump for what was brilliantly executed and textbook art of the deal. So what's going on? Is the bull market still in full swing, or will we likely continue getting new lows? Well, stay tuned because I'm going to cover all of the above in this video. And as always, if you're feeling blessed and bullish, comment 777. And if you're going to be the wealthiest person in your family tree, smash the subscribe button. Hello and welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, my name is Paul, and you can find me on Twitter or X at PaulieDeFi, PaulieDeFi. And virtually every single risk on market is up today on the news that Trump was going to pause reciprocal tariffs for at least 90 days. And this made headlines everywhere, which actually did send the market flying. This came directly from his Truth Social account, then was shared all over X. But again, reciprocal tariffs, 90 days, most countries will see a pause as they work out new trade deals, which is truly good for the US, and that's why everything is flying. Trump raised tariffs, however, on one country as an exception, and that is China, which is America's biggest trading partner and economic rival, from 104% to 125%. Now, virtually everyone was in the dark, even some of the most well-known, extremely successful, multi-billionaire investors, because we see plenty of them all over social media, all over the place, having questions, not having answers. Nobody knew what was going to happen. We just knew this likely isn't sustainable. And more than 75 countries approached the US during this time seeking a trade deal. And all of this is being recently reported, which is why markets were selling off during that time of uncertainty. And you had people like Bill Ackman, the gentleman, well, let's go ahead and find the video photo right here, basically flip-flopping a lot on X. And that's all fair, right? If you really don't know what's going to happen, at first you're really excited about this new administration and the plans that they have set in place to make America benefit, and then all of a sudden markets are crashing, my net worth is going down, nobody knows what's going to happen, we have very little communication from the top on down, and all you keep hearing is everything's going to be okay, but it doesn't seem okay. Then what happens is today they announce a 90-day pause and markets are sent soaring, and now you have Bill Ackman basically saying that this is brilliantly executed by Donald Trump. But if you went ahead and looked at what he was saying before then, he was basically stating that the formula used by the administration to calculate tariffs made other nations' tariffs appear 4 times larger than they actually are. Donald Trump is not an economist and therefore relies on advisors to do calculations. The global economy is being taken down because of bad math. In other words, he was denouncing the current tariffs and the system and the math that we were doing in order to apply these tariffs to other nations. The president's advisors need to acknowledge their error before April 9th and make a course correction before the president makes a big mistake based on bad math. And a lot of people were sharing about how all of these imports would be negatively affected, and how much of the things that we enjoy as a country today would struggle to be at any reasonable price, which leads consumers to spend less money because they cannot afford these products, and then companies suffer, which causes mass layoffs, and then we just have this downward spiral in our economy. So what exactly did Trump share that sent markets soaring? Well, he went ahead and posted on Truth Social, which again got reshared over onto X, that China has shown to the world markets that they do not respect the United States. In other words, the United States will continue to impose now a higher tariff on China. And this is where we got this stat and number, which really got people excited, is the fact that 75 countries have called representatives of the United States in order to work out new deals. In other words, everything from this point forward for those countries between trade in the US is going to be more favorable for the US, because at the end of the day, a lot of their economy is completely contingent and reliant on United States consumers. In other words, these countries will suffer more than we would without their business. But what really got markets excited is the fact that he said this one statement right here: I have authorized a 90-day pause and a substantially lowered reciprocal tariff during this period of 10%, effective immediately. To which then he posted, this is a great time to buy. And when people saw this stuff, yes, they got excited. They bought into that news. But is right now the perfect time to buy, or should you wait just a little bit longer? So will markets actually recover from this point moving forward? Are we continuing in this bull run? I think that's the question everyone has in mind, and the reality is nobody actually knows, because nobody, maybe except for a few key advisors or private secretaries in the White House, knew that Trump was going to put this post out today. I was actually looking at all of the major investor accounts, and virtually none of them knew that this was going to happen. Maybe a few key insiders do, but that's always the case in virtually every single move. 9 times out of 10, actually probably 99% of the time, you and I will never know every single little thing based on every piece of inside information. And so the reality is, when nobody really knows what's going to happen, or when Trump is going to make a game-changing post, we just have to practice proper risk management. And so when you head on over to bullrunners.com, you get access to key pieces of analysis and information from one of our professional DeFi researchers, and arguably just our team of analysts. This is not only for crypto-centered folks, although we do have a lot of mostly crypto-centered information. At the end of the day, this is for anyone who's looking to manage their risk in their portfolio, especially through such a volatile time. Because yes, we have experienced quite some volatility, especially on news like this. And so one of our analysts shared that this is kind of the policy whiplash that triggers violent market moves both ways. The balance looks good on the surface, but don't be too eager to celebrate yet. In other words, sometimes it's nice to have a dose of reality, because when you get too excited, and we've seen this before, you've probably experienced it before, on one piece of news, you get all excited, you go all in, and then the market starts to dump again. You're like, why did I do that, right? Well, we're still in the middle of a liquidity squeeze, and credit markets haven't healed just yet. In other words, it's important to pay attention to some coins that are actually doing better than others in this pump, because they might be the market leaders in the next cycle, but that does not mean we're at the start of the next cycle yet. To which he actually posts an update that Trump and China are in conversation to make a new deal. Does that mean the deal is going to follow through? No, but you're going to get access to this information before everyone else. This is stuff that we do not share on the channel. And not only that, we do have a ton of guides and courses and classes that you can take. The guides include a bull market strategy guide, when to buy, when to sell, how to take profit, how to do your taxes, right? How to get access to an XRP wallet and put your crypto to work for you so you can earn on it. And if you're not sitting on XRP but cash, how do you earn on that in a DeFi manner, in a very safe manner? How not to get rugged, and ultimately how to take advantage of narratives in order to get ahead of the market before something rallies or pumps. There are so many guides here, and we're continually adding to them. We're continually talking in this community, and we also have live calls constantly. Every Tuesday, I host a technical analysis call where I dive deep into virtually everything that I know on looking at a chart and how to approach the market, even when we see really bullish news. So if any of that or all of that sounds interesting to you, head over to bullrunners.com, check out the link in the description below, and I will see you on the other side. And so who knows whether we're out of the woods just yet. I'm going to do some technical analysis and just look at the charts to say whether or not I'm personally going to be entering. Doesn't mean you have to take my advice for it. It's just something that I consistently look at, and I was consistently calling for lower lows. We saw those lows. The question is, are we going to continue to go lower, or is this the bounce that we need need for a full recovery. Again, we'll look at that. But David Sachs here, the crypto czar and AI czar, basically stated that everything that they tried to do to create a panic did not work. A Black Monday never came. They never saw an intraday correction on Tuesday. They were all rooting for Trump to fail, even if it meant the market and economy crashed. Fortunately, their hopes have been dashed. Trump has been vindicated. China is isolated, and the rest of the world is lining up to negotiate new trade deals. That's actually quite impressive, considering all it required was a bit of volatility and really telling nobody what was going to happen, because then otherwise markets wouldn't respond in like, and countries wouldn't have taken it seriously. But because other countries saw that the market was actually crashing during this time, they said, oh my gosh, it's real. And because it's real, we have to negotiate quickly. He's not just talking. In other words, this art of the deal stuff really did work. To which he continues, do you think this would have happened if Trump had asked nicely? Maybe if he had said pretty please? Never. This is the only way to rewrite the rules of global trade. Once again, Trump was right about everything, which is actually, I don't know, kind of cool. But at the end of the day, whether or not it continues to rally remains to be seen. So let's dive into the charts. So here I have a price chart of Bitcoin, and I think I want to start with Bitcoin because Bitcoin, again, is the market leader in terms of just dominance and total money, and virtually every other crypto follows Bitcoin, even if they are negatively correlated at some point. Let's say one crypto pumps really hard, whereas Bitcoin just does nothing or goes down. At the end of the day, if Bitcoin is in a bearish environment, so will everything else. Okay, that said, we had our local or I should say double top right here at about $106,000. And since the inauguration back in January, the entire market has consistently been dumping. Sometimes it actually helps to toss a line chart on there just to see whether or not we are actually trending up or down. And the answer is still currently down. If this was our all-time high, our next major high came in somewhere in this range. Trump pump, breakdown, another low, another high, another low. In other words, all you have to do to know whether or not this is still a downtrend or an uptrend, or whether or not you should be betting against it or with it, is whether or not that we have a directional change in the trend. And right now we do not, as this is a series of lower highs and this is a series of lower lows. And the reason I have a line chart on here, and let me go ahead and remove those, is because it's no different than pulling off those wicks. Sometimes the wicks can cloud people's judgment or thinking and be like, oh my gosh, look, right? But at the end of the day, the closes are really what matters here. And as you can see, this is a technical intermediate term downtrend going back to January 20th of 2025. Now, that said, we do have something quite interesting in the works here and developing, as we're seeing a quote unquote double bottom right here. However, I'm not seeing Bitcoin really rally back above this range of 82,000, and we just closed below it today. Another thing that I'm noticing here is that if I pull up that 10 and 20 EMA on a daily time frame, we're actually just selling off at the 20 EMA. So in order for me to feel really confident and comfortable that we're actually in a new uptrend, if you will, would be a close above that $87,000 range. If Bitcoin starts to come back into this range, let's say comes back into here, 84, 85,000, breaks back down to 77, puts in a new higher low, comes back up to 87,000, breaks out above 87,000 on some volume. Yes, we're getting some volume here, but this looks like a retrace to me. I would like to see volume above $87,000 in order to start buying all of the other cryptos and altcoins that I'd like to buy, because at that point in time, a break above 87,000 would likely take us closer to 106,000 again, and anything at 106,000 in a new intermediate term uptrend would probably be a move in the longer term uptrend like this, which will take us to new highs. But at this moment in time, it's still very much possible, and I really want people to think about this, that we could break down to 72,000 or even 62,000 on the lows. So now let's come over to something like XRP. Where does that matter? Why does it matter? Well, in reality, we're still touching, look at this, that 10 EMA on a daily time frame, that blue line. The blue line is below the orange line, which is bearish. The fact that right now on a daily time frame, we have broken down below that $2 range to 195 range, and this would be our very first touch on a daily time frame. If I'm looking at a 4-hour time frame, right, this would be 1 and 2. Now, 2 touches of a range when you actually broke down after 1, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 times or 8 times is not likely going to be the breakout that we're looking for. So yes, we saw volume here, but this volume is indicative of just that Trump post, and it's not indicative, and markets, responding to it, but it's not indicative of a real breakdown, or excuse me, a breakout into new range highs. So from a daily time frame, I would like to see us back above the 20 EMA. I'd really like to see XRP back above this range at like 225. If we see XRP get back into the range of 225 and start to create a new trend, then I would be more likely to want to bet on it. But as of right now, this could be just honestly like a retrace. And so it's not something that everyone wants to hear, but I'd rather be far more confident entering a position than entering on a bounce like this only to see further sell off. And so the risk to reward here really is not that great if you're buying and holding spot right now. You'd want to see a new directional change in the trend. And this is all stuff that we share over at Altcoin Pro University. This is stuff that could not only save you money, but actually help you create money if you want to go short. So I'm not saying you should short. I'm saying you need access to the right tools, trainers, and information in order to succeed in crypto markets, especially if you're watching videos only for news, right? Because at the end of the day, by the time you're watching it, it's probably already a little too late. And also, as a final note, before we hop off, head on over to bullrunners.com/altcoin secrets. Again, you'll find that link down in the description below in order to get access to our free altcoin secrets book, where we cover everything you need in order to become a crypto millionaire. It's absolutely free. All you have to do is click this link, enter your email, and we'll send it directly to your inbox. So thanks so much for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you in the next video, my friend. Until then, practice great risk management, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Goodbye.